Hey crafters! Today I'll be showing you how I made this miniature bookcase. Today's video will be a bit different because I'm building this from the inside out. Basically, as I built this, I was still planning out how I wanted it to look as I went. I started out by making the top and the bottom and the inside dividers. Then I made 18 shelves and started gluing them in place. I left a larger space at the bottom where I wanted the cabinets to go. Then I made the sides once I knew how tall I wanted it to be and how I wanted the trim to look. You can add the shelves as you go like I did, or you can make the structure first and add the shelves after. The only reason I added them as I went was because I was still planning out how I wanted everything to look as I was building it. I cut out 3 rough pieces for the cabinet doors, and then I cut them down the middle to make 6 individual doors. I knew I was adding trims, so I wasn't too focused on getting them to fit snug in the opening. I then measured the trim in place on the bookshelf and cut it with my X-acto knife. I used the pin method to hinge the doors in place. You can see examples of how to do both of these things in my kitchen tutorial. Now it's time for the trim. Glue a strip of wood along the front and sides of the bookcase at both the bottom and the top. I then added handles to the cabinet doors. These are just tiny little nails that I left the original gold color. I then added a piece to the very top of the bookcase to close that opening around the trim. I didn't have a large enough piece to cover the back, so I took 2 pieces and glued them together. I then glued it in place on the back of the bookcase. To finish it off, I painted it white. I did want to paint it green or charcoal gray, but I was afraid that it would take away from the colors of the books. The bookcase is done and it's time to fill it with books. There are a bunch of different ways that you can make books, but this is the way I prefer to do it. I start out by Googling book covers and saving all the images into a Word document. You can either just Google book covers or you can Google specific titles if you have a favorite book in mind. The easiest way to do this is if you find a full image of the spine, front, and back cover. But if there is a specific book that you really want and can't find a full image, there's a different way you can do it. You need to find individual images of the front cover, the back cover, and the book spine, and then put them together in a Word document. Once you printed them out, you can decide what finish you want them to have. I decided to mostly go for glossy books as they were more durable. I did this by adding regular tape or packing tape on top of the images before cutting them out with scissors. If you want them to have a matte finish, you can do that by using matte tape. The tape I used wasn't as sticky as my regular gloss tape and had a tendency to lift up a little bit near the book spine. So that's why I prefer the gloss tape. After adding the tape, I would use a flat object to adhere the tape better to the image. This made the image and the colors more clear. Books come in different sizes, but I prefer the look of them being all the same height, so that's what I've decided to do. Because the covers may have different dimensions, this can mean that the book will end up being different widths, but I'm okay with that. Having them all be the same height will also make it easier when you make the pages. Once I cut them out, I would use a marker along the edges to give them more color. I made sure to use the markers that match the book covers. This will give them more definition when you see the books from the top and the sides. This isn't a crucial step if you don't want to do it, but I feel like it's a really nice detail to add. Here you can hopefully see the difference a little better. One stack has color along the edges and one doesn't. Once done, I use a ruler or a flat object to fold the covers on each side of the book spine. To make the pages, I measured out a strip of paper that is the same height as our books. I then proceeded to accordion fold it. You don't need to be precise when you fold it, you just need to make sure that it is folded to be longer than the width of your book covers. I then take the folded strip of paper and run my nail or flat object along all of the folds on one side to give it a crisp edge. Again, this isn't necessary, but it will make the end result much nicer. If one strip has the ends of the zigzag pointing in the same direction, I usually pick the opposite side to flatten. Then I take a bag clip and hold together the side we just folded. Using an X-acto knife, I cut open the other side of the zigzag. This is just so you can make all the folds flush with each other. I take the stack of pages we just made and use the table to line up the backs of all our pages to get a flat surface. To be clear, when I say the backs, I mean the folded side of the paper. You can then take the spine of your book covers and use it to measure how many pages you need. Now it's time to glue it together. Take the stack of pages you measured out and lay them against the table to even out the back of the pages. Once the spine is flat, you can clip them together and add glue along the spine. I spread it out with my finger to get an even thin layer. Let it dry and then add a second coat along the spine and a little dot on the front and back, and then add the cover in place. I use a clip to hold it together while it dries. Once it's dry, you can use your X-acto knife to cut away the excess pages and get a crisp edge. You can do this either by cutting away one page at a time, or you can lay your blade along the front cover of the book and press down with your finger. But I warn you, this will hurt your finger after a while. Now that you know how to make a mini book, it's time to make a bunch more and fill up your library. I ended up making 567 books for this bookcase, but you can definitely fill it even more than I have. But don't worry, you can definitely fill it less than I have and it will still look full. Or you can go for a more minimalist design and fill it with trinkets instead of books. I've realized I have some pet peeves when it comes to book covers. I hate it when the front and back cover are one color, but the spine is a different color. Another pet peeve is when a book series has different colored books, so you can either have the series together and your bookcase will end up looking something like this, or you will have to split them up to get that nice rainbow aesthetic. And I don't really love when the spines are multicolored. It makes it so much harder to color code them. Some other helpful tips: if you don't want to make individual pages, you can use foam board or any other material that is the correct thickness for your book. If you don't want to make individual books, you can make fake books that stand in a row. You would then place a bunch of book spines together in a Word document and then only add the front cover to the last book on the right side and the back cover on the last book to the left side. There are also plenty of these to choose from on Google and Pinterest already if you don't want to custom make it. If you plan on making any book ornaments or perhaps a glass jar or picture frame filled with the books you read so far, then you may want to consider making a book that has the front cover on both sides of the book, so no matter which way it lands, it will be facing the right way. I would recommend turning the cover that would have gone on the back of the book upside down so that it will look like the pages are on the correct side of the cover. But now we are finally done and you can fill your mini library with as many books as you want. This project took a really long time to make, but it was definitely worth it and has become one of my favorites. What genres do you prefer? Let me know your favorite books in the comments below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!